"Excuse me, what did you just say to me?" The crystal chandelier above shimmered, reflecting Claudia Bennett's glare like shards of ice. Across from her stood a waiter, black, calm, composed, holding a silver tray that still trembled from the insult that had just sliced through the air. Claudia's voice carried, sharp enough for half the restaurant to hear. "I said bring someone who actually knows how to serve." Even the pianist stopped playing. The waiter blinked once. "Is there a problem with your order, ma'am?" She leaned back in her chair, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she raised a glass of champagne. "Finally," she said with a smile, "I can relax somewhere that understands quality." Her assistant, Maya, forced a polite laugh. "Yes, ma'am. You've certainly earned it." Claudia scanned the room, her sharp eyes flicking from one server to another, judging the way they moved, the crispness of their uniforms, even how they held the silver trays. Then her gaze landed on one man, tall, poised, wearing the same black uniform as the others. But something about him was different. His movements were deliberate, graceful. His eyes, calm, focused, carried a quiet confidence that didn't belong to someone serving tables. The name tag read Elijah. He approached her table with effortless composure. "Good evening, ma'am. Would you care for another glass?" Claudia smirked. "Yes, please. But this time, make sure it's properly chilled. The last one was barely acceptable." Elijah nodded politely. "Of course, ma'am. My apologies." He walked away without flinching. Claudia turned to Maya. "See, that's the problem. People don't take pride in their work anymore. If I ran this hotel, I'd have fired half the staff by now." Maya nodded again, uneasy. "I'm sure they're doing their best." Claudia waved her off. "Excellence doesn't come from trying, Maya. It comes from standards." Moments later, Elijah returned, this time with a new bottle. He presented it with quiet professionalism. "I've opened a fresh one, ma'am. This should meet your preference." Claudia barely looked at him. "About time," she said, snatching the glass. "You should be grateful people like me give you a job at all." For a brief second, Elijah's expression flickered. Not anger, not offense, but something deeper, a knowing look. Then it vanished. "Have a pleasant evening, ma'am," he said simply. Claudia rolled her eyes as he walked away. "These people, they think respect is a two-way street," she muttered. But across the room, several guests had noticed the exchange. A quiet tension rippled through the restaurant. Among them was Richard Cole, the hotel's general manager, or so everyone thought. He observed silently from the bar, sipping his espresso. When Elijah passed by, the two exchanged a brief glance, one that spoke volumes. A minute later, Elijah disappeared through a private hallway behind the staff entrance. Claudia, oblivious, continued bragging to her assistant. "You know, my last investor dinner was at the Four Seasons. Even their service was subpar. It's like standards are dying everywhere." Suddenly, a soft chime echoed across the restaurant speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, the maitre d' announced. Please welcome the owner of Regency Royale." Claudia perked up. "Oh, the owner's here," she whispered. "Good. Maybe they'll see how sloppy their staff is." Everyone turned toward the grand staircase. A man emerged from the shadows of the upper balcony. The same tall figure from earlier. The waiter, Elijah, now dressed in an immaculate suit, his name tag gone, replaced by a golden lapel pin with the hotel's crest. "Good evening, everyone," Elijah said, his voice resonant and calm. "I'm Elijah Thompson, owner of the Regency Royale Group. I hope you're all enjoying your evening." The room erupted in polite applause, except at one table. Claudia froze. Her face drained of color as her champagne glass trembled in her hand. That's the waiter," she whispered. "What the hell is going on?" Maya's eyes widened. "Ms. Bennett, I think that's his hotel." Elijah smiled graciously at the crowd, but his eyes landed, unmistakably, on her. "Tonight," he continued, "we're celebrating 10 years of excellence, diversity, and second chances. This hotel was built on the belief that every person deserves respect, no matter what uniform they wear." The audience clapped warmly, unaware of the storm brewing inside Claudia's chest. Her fingers clenched around her napkin, Her voice trembled with disbelief. He owns his place? That's impossible. Elijah finished his speech, stepping down the staircase with quiet confidence. As he passed Claudia's table, he paused, just long enough to make eye contact. "Is the champagne chilled to your liking, ma'am?" he asked gently. The word struck like lightning. The room fell silent. Claudia opened her mouth, but no words came out. Elijah's gaze held steady, calm, kind, but undeniably powerful. Then he simply smiled and walked away. Claudia sat frozen, her mind racing. Every ounce of confidence she had moments ago had evaporated. The waiter she had belittled owned the place. Every gesture, every measured word, every ounce of poise she had dismissed now screamed at her. She had been completely wrong. Maya leaned in, whispering cautiously, "Ma'am, maybe we should apologize?" Claudia shook her head, her pride warring with her embarrassment. "Not yet. Let's see how this plays out." Elijah moved gracefully through the room, engaging with other guests, shaking hands, offering quiet words of appreciation. Every interaction he had radiated authority and warmth, a combination Claudia had never expected from someone she assumed was just a server. Finally, he returned to the staircase. His gaze swept the room, and when it landed on Claudia, the air seemed to crackle. She could feel the weight of his stare, not judgmental, not angry, but assessing. Claudia swallowed hard. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the velvet chair beneath her. "Excuse me, ma'am," Elijah said, approaching her table, voice calm yet commanding attention. "I noticed your experience with the service. I hope we can make it right." Claudia's mouth went dry. Yes, thank you." She tried to regain composure, straightening in her chair. I didn't realize." Elijah smiled slightly. "It's easy to misjudge people based on appearances. Happens to the best of us." Every word pierced her like a mirror. She had done exactly that. Misjudged. The room had gone quiet, the other patrons sensing something extraordinary unfolding. Whispers began, curious and subdued. Elijah continued, leaning slightly closer. "Here at Regency Royale, we believe that respect and excellence are earned, not assumed. Every individual here contributes to the legacy we built, whether they serve tables or sign contracts." Claudia's hands tightened around her champagne glass. She couldn't look away. She couldn't even speak. Maya finally whispered, "Ma'am, I think he's offering you a chance to make amends." Claudia hesitated. Pride warred with realization. She had to choose her next words carefully. One false step, and humiliation would be complete. Elijah extended his hand politely. "Shall we start over?" Claudia's eyes met his. For the first time, she truly saw him. Not a waiter, not a symbol of her arrogance, but a man who had quietly built an empire while she had been blind to it. Slowly, almost reluctantly, she extended her hand. "Yes, we can start over." The room exhaled collectively, as if it had been holding its breath. Elijah's handshake was firm but gentle, carrying the silent authority of someone accustomed to commanding respect without demanding it. "Good," he said. "Let's enjoy the evening. After all, tonight is about celebrating 10 years of vision, hard work, and second chances." Claudia could only nod, her mind spinning. She watched him walk away, feeling a strange mix of awe, shame, and admiration. The waiter she had mocked was more accomplished, more poised, and more intelligent than anyone in this room, including her. A quiet murmur ran through the restaurant. Guests whispered, impressed by Elijah's humility, grace, and the quiet power of someone who had earned every accolade without ever needing to announce it. Claudia realized something chilling. She had been wrong on every level. And this realization would not be fleeting. Elijah moved to the bar, greeting Richard Cole, the so-called general manager, with a nod. Cole looked momentarily tense, then relaxed as he recognized the full truth. "Sir, may I ask a question?" Cole whispered. Elijah nodded. "Of course." Cole lowered his voice. "How long have you been managing this hotel as the owner?" Elijah's smile was quiet, almost secretive. "I've been overseeing operations personally for the past 8 years. Most people assume titles mean authority, but real leadership is invisible. It's about seeing potential where others don't." Claudia's jaw tightened. 8 years. All this time, she had assumed he was just another server. And now, she understood the depth of her mistake. Across the room, Elijah's presence had shifted everything. Guests now watched with genuine respect. The energy in the restaurant had changed, from polite service to the reverence reserved for someone who commanded it naturally. Claudia leaned back in her chair, mind racing. How many other assumptions had she made in her life? How often had she judged people based on appearances? Elijah, seemingly sensing her turmoil, looked toward her one final time before moving to the stage for the evening celebration. His eyes conveyed understanding, but also a quiet challenge. Recognize the worth in others or risk being left behind. And Claudia knew, in that instant, that this night would haunt her, but it could also teach her a lesson worth far more than any business deal. The golden chandeliers reflected off the polished marble floors, casting long shadows. And in those shadows, Claudia realized that the waiter she had mocked had just taught her the most important lesson of her life. True power doesn't announce itself, it proves itself. The room buzzed with polite applause, but Claudia barely noticed. Her mind replayed every harsh word, every dismissive gesture she had thrown Elijah's way. Each memory now felt like a dagger against her pride. Maya leaned in, whispering nervously, "Miss Bennett, maybe you should step outside for a moment." Claudia shook her head. "No, I need to face this." Her eyes followed Elijah as he moved through the room, greeting staff, checking on servers, and acknowledging the chefs in the kitchen. Each person he spoke to responded with warmth and respect. It was obvious. This was not a man who relied on fear or intimidation. He commanded loyalty with integrity. Finally, Claudia took a deep breath and rose from her seat. She approached Elijah cautiously, trying to mask her trembling hands. "Mr. Thompson," she said, her voice low but steady, I owe you an apology." Elijah turned, eyes meeting hers with calm composure. "Apologies are only meaningful when paired with understanding," he said quietly. Claudia swallowed hard, feeling her ego crumble. "I misjudged you. I assumed." "You assumed what?" Elijah asked gently. "That you were just a waiter, that you didn't deserve respect, that your position meant something less than mine." Her words rushed out in a torrent of shame. Elijah's expression softened. "And now," Claudia paused, searching for the right words. "Now, I see that I was blind. I see that real power, real leadership, comes from character, not title, from vision, not uniform." He nodded once, approvingly. "Good. That's the first step." Claudia's chest tightened. She had built an empire, negotiated multi-million-dollar deals. Yet here she was humbled by a man she thought served her drinks. The irony was not lost on her. I don't know how to make this right," she admitted. Elijah smiled faintly. "Respect is earned, not bought. Start by treating people as humans, not roles. That is how you rebuild what pride can break." Across the room, staff watched silently. The energy had shifted completely. Guests now whispered in awe, witnessing a lesson in humility and leadership unfold in real time. Claudia returned to her chair, feeling the weight of her arrogance pressing down on her. She realized that her company, her fortune, her achievements meant nothing if she could not recognize and honor the people around her. Maya touched her arm lightly. "Ms. Bennett, maybe this is a lesson we both needed." Claudia nodded slowly. Yes, it is." Meanwhile, Elijah returned to the stage, addressing the guests with ease. "Tonight, we celebrate excellence. Not just the kind measured by profit or power, but the kind defined by integrity, by respect, by the ability to see the potential in everyone around us." The room erupted in applause once again. Guests rose to their feet, not merely out of etiquette, but genuine admiration. Claudia sat back, a sense of awe and regret washing over her. She realized that for the first time in her life, she had witnessed leadership defined by something far greater than wealth or status. Elijah's gaze briefly met hers across the room. There was no malice, no judgment, only a silent invitation to change, to grow, to lead differently. And Claudia knew, deep down, that her life would never be the same. The night stretched on, filled with laughter, conversation, and celebration. But in Claudia's mind, one truth resonated louder than all the champagne glasses and applause. She had been humbled, and in that humility lay the possibility of a transformation far greater than any business success she had ever achieved. The lesson was clear. Never underestimate someone based on their uniform, their role, or their appearance. True greatness is often disguised as ordinary. The Regency Royale's golden lights flickered softly, reflecting off crystal chandeliers as whispers filled the room. Guests leaned toward one another, quietly discussing the revelation. The waiter they had casually ignored or overlooked was the man who owned the entire hotel. Claudia sat frozen, her mind racing. Every interaction she had dismissed, every sneer, every condescending remark, they all came back to her with double weight. She realized with a sinking heart that her arrogance had blinded her. Across the room, Elijah moved gracefully, checking on tables and subtly directing staff. But there was no hurry, no panic, only quiet, unwavering control. His presence was magnetic. Staff straightened instinctively as he passed, nodding in deference, not fear. At the bar, Richard Cole, the general manager, the one everyone assumed ran the hotel, quietly approached Claudia. "Miss Bennett," he began, his voice low, "I think it's time you saw how the hotel really operates." Claudia looked up, wary. "And how is that?" Richard gestured toward Elijah. "This man doesn't just own the hotel. He's involved in every detail. Every training session, every staffing decision, every guest experience. He oversees it himself. And people follow him because they want it, not because they're afraid of losing their jobs." Claudia swallowed hard. The reality hit her like a wave. Her assumptions about power, authority, and status had been completely wrong. She had been humbled by a man she believed served her drinks. Meanwhile, Elijah returned to the grand staircase. Guests instinctively parted, creating a path as if royalty were passing. He stopped at the center, surveying the room. His eyes, calm and steady, landed on Claudia once more. "Miss Bennett," he called, his voice carrying over the soft jazz and murmurs. "I hope your evening is now more enlightening." The words, though simple, carried an unmistakable authority. Claudia's lips parted, but no words came. She felt exposed, vulnerable, yet strangely aware that she needed to listen, truly listen. Elijah's staff noticed a shift too. Servers exchanged glances, recognizing that the woman who had criticized their colleague moments ago was now confronting her own biases. Even the chefs peeked from the kitchen, intrigued by the unfolding drama. Elijah continued, addressing the guests in a smooth, controlled tone. "At Regency Royale, we believe every person has value, not because of their title, their background, or the uniform they wear, but because of the respect they command through their actions." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the room. Guests nodded, murmured, and some even applauded quietly. Claudia felt a twinge of shame twist in her stomach. She realized that while she had built empires, negotiated multimillion-dollar deals, and commanded respect in her world, she had never understood the power of authentic leadership. Maya, still at her side, whispered gently, "Miss Bennett, maybe this is the start of something bigger than business lessons." Claudia nodded, eyes fixed on Elijah. "Yes, bigger than anything I've ever known." Then Elijah approached her table once more, this time not as a waiter, not as a CEO of a hotel, but as a man in complete command of his world. "Would you care for another glass?" he asked, his tone calm, yet carrying the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. Claudia's fingers trembled slightly as she took the glass. She wanted to speak, to apologize again, but Elijah merely smiled and walked away. His authority was clear. He didn't need her validation. His presence alone spoke volumes. Across the restaurant, whispers turned into conversations. Guests shared stories of being similarly humbled in their own lives. Staff, once nervous, now exuded pride. And Claudia, for the first time in years, felt what it meant to truly witness greatness. Not in titles, not in money, but in character and respect. That night, the lesson was clear. True power is invisible until it is recognized, and respect is earned by the few willing to walk the path of humility. The murmurs around the Regency Royale grew louder, but Claudia felt as if the room had shrunk to just her and Elijah. Every insult she had flung, every dismissive glance, now replayed in her mind like a damning montage. Guests leaned back in their seats, some smiling politely, some whispering excitedly about the revelation. The waiter who had served them drinks with impeccable grace was a man in charge. Claudia could feel every eye on her, weighing her, judging her. Maya touched her arm gently. "Miss Bennet, maybe this is a lesson we all needed." Claudia shook her head, though her lips trembled. She felt exposed not by failure, but by the recognition that she had underestimated someone purely because of the uniform they wore. The arrogance she wore like armor now felt brittle. Elijah moved through the room, checking on a table here, adjusting a chair there. Each gesture, deliberate and quiet, commanded more respect than Claudia's own carefully honed charisma ever had. Then, the real turning point arrived. Elijah approached her table with a small, velvet box. Claudia's eyes narrowed instinctively. What could he possibly want now? Opening the box, he revealed a pristine silver card holder. "For you, Miss Bennet," he said, his tone calm, his smile gentle but knowing. "To remind you, respect can be extended even after judgment, and second chances are always possible." Claudia's hand hovered over the gift. It was a peace offering, but more than that, it was a statement. He had not only humbled her, but he had done it with grace and authority. Her mind raced. How many times had she dismissed brilliance in others? How many opportunities had she lost because she valued status over substance? She felt a pang of guilt so sharp it made her stomach churn. Elijah turned, addressing the entire room. "This evening is a celebration of not only our hotel's success, but the success of every individual who walks through its doors. Every person has a story, a potential, a dignity. We honor that tonight." Guests erupted in applause. Some cheered softly. Others simply nodded, understanding that this moment was larger than just one woman's humiliation. It was a universal lesson in respect and perception. Claudia sat back, trembling slightly. She wanted to speak, to defend herself, but no words came. Instead, she realized something deeper. This wasn't about apology. It was about recognition. Recognition of her own flaws and the brilliance she had dismissed. Finally, she found her voice, quiet but sincere. I see now," she said, her tone barely above a whisper. "I see what I've been missing." Elijah nodded, accepting her words without needing more. His calm authority required no further explanation. He didn't need to chastise. The lesson had already landed. The staff around them resumed their duties. But their posture had changed. Guests who had been on the fence now watched in admiration. The entire atmosphere of the Regency Royale had shifted. Claudia's mind, once sharp with arrogance and self-assured dominance, now began to open. For the first time, she considered humility not as weakness, but as a pathway to true leadership. Elijah returned to the grand staircase, surveying his hotel with quiet pride. Every detail, every interaction, had unfolded exactly as he had hoped. The lesson had been delivered without malice, without spectacle, and yet the impact was undeniable. Maya leaned closer, whispering, "Miss Bennet, this could change everything." Claudia nodded slowly, a single thought anchoring her as she watched Elijah. The measure of greatness is not in titles or wealth, but in the ability to lift others while standing tall yourself. And with that realization, the stage was set for the transformation of a lifetime, not just for Claudia, but for everyone who would cross paths with the quiet power of Elijah Thompson. The evening at the Regency Royale ended, but the impact of what had just unfolded lingered like the final notes of a symphony. Claudia walked to the private lounge with Maya trailing quietly behind, her mind racing. She sat in a plush velvet chair, staring at the silver card holder Elijah had gifted her. It gleamed under the warm light, a symbol of grace she had never truly understood until now. "This changes everything," Maya said softly, breaking the silence. Claudia shook her head slowly. "Not just for me, for everyone I've overlooked, for every brilliant mind I've dismissed because of appearances, background, or title. I've been blind." Her reflection in the glass seemed different, somehow older and wiser. The arrogance that had propelled her to the top of the corporate ladder now fell hollow, replaced with gnawing awareness of the walls she had built around her perspective. The ripple effect was immediate. That night, Claudia began reaching out to her team at Bennett Innovations. She asked questions she had never asked before. She listened, truly listened, and she discovered things that shocked her. Brilliant engineers who have been stuck in dead-end roles, creative strategists whose ideas have been sidelined, and marketers whose talents have been underestimated for years. Meanwhile, news of Elijah Thompson's revelation spread quietly at first, then like wildfire through social media and business networks. The story wasn't just about a wealthy hotel owner humiliating a CEO. It was about the power of perception, the danger of assumptions, and the untapped potential that exists in every person. Executives from neighboring companies began reaching out, curious, inspired, even humbled. They asked how Elijah had managed to command respect without raising his voice, how he had handled Claudia with both firmness and kindness, and how it had transformed the hotel staff into a living example of dignity and excellence. Claudia, now awake at 2 a.m., drafted her first email of reflection. It wasn't a press release, nor was it a public apology. It was personal. Today, I learned the most important lesson in my career. She typed slowly, carefully choosing each word. True leadership is not measured by authority or wealth, but by the ability to see potential in everyone, to lift others while remaining grounded yourself. I am grateful for the lesson, and for the people I have yet to see clearly. She sent it to her entire executive team. Within minutes, responses poured in. Gratitude, excitement, even relief. Employees admitted they had been afraid to speak up, but Claudia's newfound humility created a space for voices long silenced. Across town, Elijah reviewed the evening with his assistant, Thomas. It worked exactly as planned, he said, voice calm but satisfied. She's learning, and with her influence, she can impact hundreds of lives now. Thomas raised an eyebrow. Do you really think she'll change after all the arrogance we saw? Elijah's eyes sparkled with quiet certainty. Not immediately, but the seed has been planted. The right experience at the right moment can transform anyone, even a Fortune 100 CEO. The next morning, Claudia arrived at her office with a different energy. No longer sharp and dismissive, she moved through her team with curiosity and attention. She asked questions about ongoing projects, genuinely listened to the answers, and noticed things she had missed for years. Her assistant, Maya, observed the change with a mix of awe and cautious optimism. I've never seen her like this, she whispered to a colleague. It's like she's actually seeing people for the first time. Meanwhile, across the hotel industry and corporate world, discussions began about the story of the CEO and the waiter who owned it all. Leadership blogs analyzed it. Podcasts debated it. Motivational speakers cited it. One lesson rang louder than any. Brilliance and worth are not dictated by uniform or title. And the most profound change was happening quietly in boardrooms everywhere. Executives started asking themselves the question Elijah had posed silently that night. Who am I dismissing? Whose potential am I overlooking because of bias, appearance, or circumstance? At the same time, Elijah began planning the next step for his vision. He wanted the story to reach further than just Chicago. He wanted it to inspire change, to create opportunity, to open doors for those who've been unseen, unheard, undervalued. Claudia, now awake late at night, picked up her phone. She called Maya. Set up a meeting with Elijah Thompson. She said firmly, I want to learn from him, personally, and I want to bring his philosophy into Bennett Innovations. Every employee deserves to be seen, valued, and empowered. Maya hesitated. Do you really think he'll meet with you? Claudia smiled, a mixture of determination and humility. I don't just want to meet him. I want to change my company. And I want to change myself in the process. As she hung up, Claudia stared out the window at the city lights below. The world felt different now. Broader, richer, full of untapped potential. The lesson from the Regency Royale wasn't just about humility. It was about vision. And Claudia was ready to see it through. The morning sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Bennett Innovations headquarters. Claudia Bennett arrived earlier than usual, her heels clicking against the polished marble floors. But today, the sound didn't carry its usual authority. Today, it carried intention. In the boardroom, her executives gathered, curious but cautious. Whispers filled the space. What's gotten into her? Why the early meeting? Claudia stood at the head of the table, a quiet power emanating from her newfound humility. She held a tablet in her hands. This morning, I want to share a story, she began, her voice calm, deliberate. A story about a man I underestimated. A man who showed me what true leadership looks like. The room fell silent. She recounted the events at the Regency Royale, the arrogance, the realization, and Elijah Thompson's quiet, profound lesson in seeing people for their potential, not their uniforms. She watched their expressions shift from skepticism to intrigue, to genuine reflection. And this story, she continued, taught me that brilliance is everywhere, that talent exists in places we often overlook, and that it's our job, mine, yours, our company's, to find it and cultivate it. Claudia swiped through her tablet. Today, we launched the Second Chance Initiative. Our mission, to identify displaced professionals, overlooked talent, and undervalued individuals, and integrate them into our workforce. People who are underestimated, but capable of extraordinary contributions. Questions erupted. The CFO, Peter Halstead, raised an eyebrow. Claudia, are you seriously suggesting we hire based on potential? How do we measure that? We can't risk company productivity. She smiled, patient but firm. Peter, we're not taking a gamble. We're creating opportunity. We'll implement mentorship programs, skills evaluations, and targeted training. We'll pair hidden talent with senior executives who can guide them. And yes, we'll measure outcomes. But our first metric is fairness. Our second is impact. The CTO, Rajiv Sharma, leaned forward. Do you have examples in mind? Claudia nodded. I've already started reviewing applications. People from every background. Former teachers, military veterans, janitors who were engineers, restaurant staff who have business degrees. I want to personally interview the first 50 candidates this month. And every new hire will have a mentor, someone who sees their potential, just as Elijah saw his own employees at the Regency Royale. A murmur of approval spread through the room. HR Director Lila Chun spoke next. We can create an internal portal to source these candidates. Partner with organizations that help displaced professionals. Offer scholarships for upskilling. The initiative could ripple beyond just our company. Claudia's eyes shone. Exactly. This isn't just about Bennett Innovations. This is about creating a movement, a corporate culture where talent is recognized, potential is nurtured, and people are valued for what they can contribute, not where they start. By the end of the day, the Second Chance Initiative had been formalized. Teams were assembled, application portals went live, and communications went out to corporate partners and local organizations. Social media buzzed with the announcement. And within hours, emails poured in from people inspired by Claudia's story and Elijah's example. Among the first applications was a resume from Marcus, a young MIT graduate working at a fast food restaurant, his brilliance hidden by circumstance. There was Aisha, a former software engineer in Detroit who had been overlooked for years. And there was Carlos, a military veteran with leadership experience and an unmatched analytical mind. Claudia read each application carefully, personally flagging those who resonated most. She remembered Elijah's words. See the person, not the position. Meanwhile, news outlets began to pick up the story. The tale of the CEO who had been humbled by a hotel owner turned waiter, and then used that lesson to launch a Second Chance Initiative. Captivated audiences nationwide. Podcasts invited Claudia for interviews. Business columns ran features highlighting the importance of overlooked talent. The movement had begun. But behind the scenes, Elijah Thompson was watching quietly. From his office at the Regency Royale Group, he monitored the progress of the initiative. He smiled as he read the first interviews Claudia conducted, the first email she sent, the first mentorship pairings being assigned. Exactly as it should be, he murmured to his assistant. It starts with awareness, then opportunity, then transformation. That evening, Claudia reflected in her office, the city lights shimmering below. She realized something profound. The lesson Elijah had taught her wasn't just about humility. It was about legacy, the impact one person could have by choosing to see the unseen. And now, She was in a position to multiply that impact across her company and beyond. For the first time, leadership didn't feel like a throne. It felt like a responsibility, a chance to shape not just a company, but the world it touched. Weeks passed, and the Second Chance initiative began showing tangible results. Employees who had once been underestimated or overlooked were now thriving in positions that highlighted their true talents. Claudia's office was buzzing. Every day, new reports arrived, productivity metrics, personal success stories, and even unsolicited praise from corporate partners. The first story that caught her eye was Marcus, the MIT graduate who had been working at a fast food restaurant. Within 2 weeks of onboarding, he had developed an optimized logistics plan for one of Bennett Innovation's distribution centers, saving the company millions in operational costs. Claudia called him into her office. "Marcus, this is incredible work. Tell me, what made the difference?" Marcus smiled, slightly overwhelmed. "I just want a chance, ma'am. Someone who believed I could do more than my circumstances suggested." Claudia leaned back, smiling knowingly. Exactly the point. Meanwhile, at the Regency Royale, Elijah continued his own quiet mentorship. He had personally recommended 3 of his former staff members, people who had worked under him as servers and maintenance staff, for managerial positions at partner hotels around the country. Their performance impressed everyone, from regional directors to international partners. Back at Bennett Innovations, Aisha, the former software engineer, successfully implemented a machine learning protocol that improved client data analysis efficiency by 40%. Carlos, the military veteran, led a project that restructured cross-departmental communications, reducing project delays by 60%. Word spread quickly. Social media buzzed with the hashtag #SecondChanceSuccess, featuring stories of people whose hidden potential was finally recognized. Videos of Claudia and her employees went viral. News outlets ran human interest stories about corporate responsibility, talent recognition, and the transformational power of giving someone opportunity when no one else would. Soon, global attention followed. Claudia was invited to speak at international conferences, TEDx events, and Fortune 500 summits. Each time, she credited Elijah's quiet lesson at the Regency Royale, emphasizing the importance of seeing potential, not titles. Elijah, on the other hand, maintained his humility. He remained focused on operations at the Regency Royale and continued advising global partners quietly, never seeking the spotlight. Yet through Claudia's public initiatives, his philosophy spread worldwide. One morning, Claudia received a call from a high-profile executive at a multinational tech firm in Tokyo. "Ms. Bennett," the voice said, "we've been following your Second Chance initiative. We'd like to pilot a similar program at our company, starting with underutilized talent in our support staff. Can you help us?" Claudia smiled. "Absolutely. But first, you need to understand the principle behind it. It's not about charity. It's about recognizing potential and creating a culture where it can thrive." The initiative had begun producing a ripple effect. Other companies started mirroring the model, creating mentorship programs, evaluating talent beyond traditional criteria, and prioritizing diversity and experience, not just demographics. Within 3 months, Bennett Innovations had identified and promoted over 200 individuals whose abilities had been overlooked for years. Productivity soared, employee satisfaction reached record highs, and the corporate culture had fundamentally shifted. Claudia received a letter from a young engineer named Naomi, who had been working as a janitor in a nearby tech hub. Her words were simple but powerful. "Thank you for seeing me. I never thought anyone would. Now, I'm leading a team of 5 engineers. My life has changed forever." Claudia placed the letter on her desk, next to the photo of Elijah at the Regency Royale. She whispered, almost to herself, "It starts with one person seeing the potential in another. That's all it takes." By this time, Elijah had been quietly recognized by several international organizations for his mentorship and leadership philosophy. Invitations for consulting and speaking engagements arrived daily, but he politely declined, focusing instead on building systems that would empower others. The world was beginning to take notice, not of a hotel owner, not of a CEO, but of the idea that people could be more than their current roles, more than their circumstances. And at the center of it all Quietly guiding the wave of change was a man who had once only been seen as a waiter, Elijah Thompson, who had taught a CEO, and through her, the world, to see talent for what it truly is. The success stories kept pouring in, and Claudia knew that this was just beginning. The initiative wasn't a one-time effort. It was a movement, a transformation, a revolution in corporate culture. The lesson was simple. If you take the time to see beyond appearances, you unlock a world of possibilities. Just as the Second Chance Initiative was gaining momentum, an unexpected crisis hit. One Monday morning, Claudia received an urgent call from her VP of Operations. Ms. Bennett, we have a situation. One of the new hires, an exceptionally talented engineer we promoted last month, has been accused of a compliance violation in one of our European offices. They're threatening legal action. Claudia's heart sank. This was the first serious obstacle since launching the initiative. A misstep like this could undo months of progress and invite public scrutiny. She called an emergency meeting with her leadership team. "We built something incredible," she began, her voice steady but firm, "and we're not going to let one challenge destroy it. I want facts, not panic." Her team presented the situation. The engineer named Lucas had discovered an innovative algorithm that optimized supply chain logistics. However, the methodology had similarities with a competitor's proprietary process in Germany. The competitor was now claiming intellectual property infringement. Claudia turned to her legal advisor. "Are we exposed?" "Potentially, yes," the attorney admitted, "but we need to investigate fully. This could go either way, and the press is already sniffing for a story." Claudia exhaled slowly, gathering her thoughts. Then she remembered the advice Elijah had given her months ago. Preparation prevents humiliation. She called Elijah. "Elijah, I need your insight. We're facing a high-stakes intellectual property dispute in Europe, and it's tied to one of our second-chance hires." "Send me all the documentation," he replied calmly. "I'll analyze it and let you know the best course of action." Within hours, Elijah had meticulously reviewed every piece of code, every report, and every email related to project. His approach was surgical. He compared Lucas' algorithm line by line with competitors, examining architecture, methodology, and data sources. "Claudia," Elijah said later, after a long call with the European office, "the similarities are superficial. Lucas' work is original, but perception is critical. We need a proactive strategy." He recommended a multi-step plan. Direct dialogue. Contact the competitor's legal team in Germany to explain the differences and establish goodwill. Transparency. Share detailed documentation with European regulators to preempt misunderstandings. Media management. Prepare a careful press statement emphasizing innovation and ethical practices without drawing unnecessary attention. Internal coaching. Guide Lucas and other employees on how to communicate complex technical processes clearly to external stakeholders. Claudia immediately authorized the plan. Within 24 hours, Elijah was leading multilingual video conferences with a German team, calmly explaining technical nuances, referencing patents, and highlighting the originality of Lucas' work. The competitor, initially aggressive, softened as Elijah demonstrated expertise and clarity. By the end of the week, the claim was officially withdrawn. No lawsuit, no negative press, no disruption. The boardroom erupted with relief. Claudia looked at Elijah, awe written on her face. "You turned what could have been a disaster into a win," she said quietly. Elijah smiled. "It wasn't just me. It's a system we've built. Trust in talent, rigorous preparation, and clear communication. Those are the pillars." Claudia nodded. She realized something crucial. The initiative was not just about giving second chances. It was about creating a framework where talent could thrive, mistakes could be mitigated, and crises could be navigated without panic. In the aftermath, Lucas sent Claudia an email. "Thank you for believing in me. I almost lost myself doubting whether I belonged. But your trust and Elijah's guidance reminded me that talent is about capability, not circumstance." Claudia forwarded the email to Elijah. He replied simply, "Exactly as it should be. Now, we prepare for the next challenge." The first major test of the Second Chance Initiative had passed, and it had passed not because of luck, but because of careful planning, mentorship, and the courage to trust overlooked talent. But Claudia knew this. In the corporate world, the next challenge was never far away. The question was, could they continue to protect their people, their principles, and their mission under increasing scrutiny? Months had passed since the European IP crisis. The Second Chance Initiative was no longer a pilot program. It had become a movement. Sterling Innovations had not only transformed internally, but had inspired companies across the country to rethink how they valued talent. Claudia sat in her corner office, overlooking the city skyline. The late afternoon sun painted the room in gold, but her mind wasn't on the view. She was thinking of every employee who had come to the program. Engineers, marketers, drivers, administrative staff, all individuals who had been overlooked, underestimated, or dismissed. Her phone buzzed. It was Elijah. "Claudia, are you free? I want to show you something." Moments later, he arrived, carrying a tablet. He swiped through a live dashboard of the Second Chance Initiative. 500 employees fully integrated, 25 promotions awarded, 8 international projects successfully completed by previously overlooked staff, and dozens of companies reaching out for partnerships. Claudia's eyes widened. I can't believe it. Look at these numbers. The impact, it's huge." Elijah smiled quietly. "It's just getting started. Remember, transformation doesn't happen in months. It happens every time someone decides to see talent where others see only a uniform." Their conversation was interrupted by a knock. It was Maria Rodriguez, the former driver turned head of legal. She entered with her tablet. "Ms. Bennett, Mr. Thompson, we just received a request from Samsung and 3 other Fortune 500 companies. They want to replicate the Second Chance Initiative model in their organizations. They're offering funding, mentorship, and full integration support." Claudia exhaled, a mix of disbelief and pride. "Elijah, we started with a single idea. And now this." Elijah's expression softened. "It's the people, Claudia. Always the people. They're the true story. The results are just evidence." Suddenly, a video call notification popped up. It was Sarah, Elijah's daughter. Her face was glowing with excitement. "Dad, guess what? I just completed a groundbreaking pediatric research rotation. My findings could impact treatment protocols for pediatric leukemia." Elijah's voice broke slightly with pride. "Sweetheart, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you." Claudia watched the exchange, realizing something profound. The ripple effect of believing in people extended far beyond business. It reached families, communities, and future generations. As the day ended, Sterling Innovations held a company-wide virtual meeting. Elijah and Claudia addressed the entire team. "Today," Elijah began, "we celebrate not just promotions or deals, but the recognition of human potential. Talent is everywhere. Sometimes it's hidden under uniform, behind a title, or beneath circumstances. Our responsibility is to see it, nurture it, and create opportunities where brilliance can shine." Claudia continued, "Each of you, whether you started as interns, drivers, or overlooked staff, are the proof that giving someone a second chance can change everything. This company, these results, our culture, it's because of you." Applause echoed virtually from every office across the globe. Faces appeared on screens, smiling, proud, inspired. The movement was no longer just a story. It was a revolution in corporate culture. Later that evening, Elijah and Claudia reflected privately in the executive lounge. "Do you ever think about the moment it all began?" Claudia asked, her voice quiet. "The morning at the Regency Royale," Elijah replied. He smiled. Who would have thought a single interaction, a glass of champagne, a conversation, a moment of recognition, could spark something this powerful? Claudia nodded. It wasn't just about that moment. It was about seeing, really seeing. Elijah's gaze softened. "Exactly. And now, we're giving others the same gift. A chance to be seen, to be valued, to thrive." They stood together, looking out at the city lights. A sense of accomplishment hung in the air, but so did anticipation. The future was just beginning. Talent doesn't always wear a suit, carry a title, or sit in a corner office. Sometimes it serves you coffee, carries a tray, or sweeps the floor. But brilliance exists in every person, waiting for someone to see it. Today we choose to see it. Today we give second chances. And tomorrow, the world changes one hidden talent at a time.